Heidi, howdy, howdy, this is JL for another weekly Shonen nonsense. For the week of April 9th, 2023, we got a packed list today, so let's just jump right into it. And starting out, as always, is One Piece, chapter 1080. And we've completely forgot about Egghead for a bit because we're stuck on Full Lead Island. And we kind of get more of an explanation of Blackbeard and his crew, including Pizarro, who apparently is just a better form of Pika, because he's not just stone, he is the entire damn island, making the skull talk. Of course, we also get Blackbeard's dream, which apparently is to build a kingdom and then work with the world government. What is his goal here? And we also get a sword explanation, explaining that sword is actually a unit of the Marines who's sort of just going off on their own. The world government does acknowledge them, and they just kind of do their own justice. And we get a bunch of sword members, including Kujaku, who's apparently a dominatrix, because we have to have more of those. This is actually, I think, like the third dominatrix or Dom-esque character. I think Oda has a type. Anyway, we also get the Tsundere Hibari, who made lunch for her senpai, Kobe Baka. And lastly, we get Garb coming in, doing a Luffy, and punching the living crap out of everybody, because yes, that is Garb. This is a fascinating turn. We are just getting this. If we're going to keep being here for like the next few chapters, I mean, one, that's an amazing breakup from all the crazy stuff that's happening on Egghead, but I'm a little scared that we're kind of like deviating a bit too much. I really want it to be finished in Egghead before we really jump into anything more, but this this is an arc, if this is just the Egghead arc so far, is wild how jumpy it is, how we can keep jumping to different things. So, again, I am so glad to be reading this. Hey, a new series, Tenmaku Cinema. This was a pretty chunky first chapter. We introduce our main character of Hajime, another character named Hajime, who is a movie buff, a sickly movie buff who, went to high school, basically took over a cinema class just so he could watch more movies. And now he's been possessed by a ghost named Tenmaku from 30 years ago, who was wanting to be a writer for movies, and the guy he wanted to direct has been dead for that time too. So now we have a little plot of him wanting to write a movie starring the granddaughter of the original director and getting back to a little bit of his old life before he passes on. It's all right. The art's pretty good, considering this is a duo team of a writer and an artist. Art's fairly straightforward, telling the story, while the writer basically gets to position the characters the way they want. So good dividing of the work here. Generally, I can see where it's gonna go. They want to make a movie and become a movie director, so we'll get into the weeds of things. Hopefully, we're also dealing with a dead guy and a living person, and that out of placement time hit thing where they're doing, Tenmaku going, what do you mean Disney owns Star Wars? But again, it's a decent start. Hopefully it'll be good for everything that can go on with Shonen Jump, but we'll get into that a little later. On to Fabricant 100, Chapter 17. Girl fight! More girls! More fighting! So we get a continuation from 16, where we have Ayeko, the two-faced, and Minmin, who's just kind of angry and uses nunchucks. Now they talk about like sparks, and they kind of give a stand-like appearance. Only certain percent of people can be stand users. I mean spark users, because they die if the electricity from the heart sparks them and causes them the problems. And of course, we're going to see where this goes here with our boy Ashabi fighting Ayako, who's trying to scare him with her really bizarre skill. Apparently, seeing better makes you faster. Like, the explanation of the power is that she can see so well within a 2-meter radius that she can react to any attack possible and react within that time. So Her eyesight makes her reflexes better. It's just a little bit too surreal and vague of an explanation for essentially just her moving fast within the space. Like, it makes more sense if it's a touch based skill rather than eyesight, because she's not really seeing as much as she's feeling the possible impacts. Again, it's a bit vague, and we're getting into the real meat of it next chapter, where we're going to see Ayako actually fight Ashabi and see what Ashabi is going to do. And in my mind, I keep going to Undead Unluck's Andy, wondering, is he going to cut off his hand and like shoot his hand out like a blood bullet, or like a fist bullet? Because that would be funny, especially after like just how desperate he was not to hurt himself. It's time for Ichigoki's Under Control, Chapter 18. We're in the Demon Realm. And another year has passed. It has been 5 years since high school. This series is either just going to be canceled next week, or it's just blasting through these because it doesn't care. It just does not care. And it is hilarious. Just, like, we see him, like, fighting the Demon King. He's preparing. He's like trained for a year, and his entire class comes to the Demon Realm for their reunion. Just that was a funny bit. Just everything is just he's throwing punches, he's dodging, weaving, throwing blows, like losing control, and meanwhile his entire class is like arguing with the waiters and drinking and showing off to each other after all time being apart. This series is wild. And of course, drinking solves everything. So now he has all 3 balls. What will that mean? Will the series end on a bad joke? I seriously hope so. And onward we go to Cypher Academy Chapter 19. It's poker. It's poker, but with really, really dumb rules. It's not even good poker. It's like we show everybody our cards, but we don't know what they actually mean unless we apparently have read Through the Looking Glass and know all the quotes by heart. This is a little pretentious. It's expected to know a book that we have no actual familiarity with a game that isn't really familiar with the Japanese public. Or at least my thought process is poker's not necessarily the most popular card game out there in the world. There's probably more things. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does exist, but the main bulk of it is, it just feels pretentious. It just feels like it's kind of meandering for the sake of it. And if this is going to be succeeding, if this is going to be one of the series that like stands at the top of Shonen Jump for a while, I'm kind of hoping it does a little better than just, making it look like everybody can just understand these things for no discernible reason. We come from a character who apparently knows a lot, knows more than the audience, and is able to infer these weird details about dumb poker card gimmicks. Again, and the stakes are kind of low. It's like, let's try to be the class leader. Oh, and that, I just remembered Yosai Mura mentioned during the entire affair that she wanted to keep everything fair just because, Iroha didn't get all the votes. He should have an equal chance just like everybody else at the table. And my thought goes, so you don't like democracy, you want your fight to be fair, in that if you lose, even if you got more votes, you deserve to lose. This is stupid. This is just dumb. I'm sorry. I will hate read this series for a good long time until it gets canceled, and I sort of hope it gets canceled soon, but considering we're kind of in the middle of a little lazy of an arc, there's not a chance of it actually failing anytime soon, it seems like. Or at least if it's gonna die, it's gonna die like in 10 chapters rather than in 2 or 3. Also, at the very end, apparently she just wins by calling all their cards trash. No explanation by the comic. It would go into great details about that last thing, but this, no. She just wins. She just wins. Every card is trash. It's all trash. So she wins. Ugh. Yeah. Into Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins, Chapter 20. So apparently he's in denial, not memory loss, thankfully. And there's some good drama here with Tsubasa talking to his grandpa. Ooh, that does make me remember that there is a really cool moment in this where we go into a flashback to explain kind of an old memory that Tsubasa has about his grandfather. Apparently they had a fight, his parents and him, and his grandpa took him to a museum. They hung around, saw the experiments. He fed him and said like, "Don't worry about emotions," and kind of had a heart to heart. And we kind of get into the present, the dream, I guess. And the grandpa kind of does it again. Like he points out emotions are pointless. Being emotional is not good, but he does worry about his grandson. Gives him food, says rest, take a minute, breathe. Very interesting. But the part that gets me is Tsubasa kind of plays along with the memory. And it's a flashback where he's aware that it's a flashback. It's in a narrative, a flashback, because this is in his head. It's a very, like, interesting take on this. One Piece does flashbacks, Naruto did flashbacks, Bleach did flashbacks, and we sort of kind of accepted that we're just, as the audience, being told this information, without much narrative input from any of the characters on here. Like, we'll get like Ace's backstory with Luffy, crying in the woods, but we won't really he's not telling anybody. He's just kind of thinking it, or at least that's our interpretation, is he's remembering his times with Ace. Though we also remember seeing times where Luffy wasn't there with Garp or with other people. So it's a bit like this is an in narrative and characters are aware that they're in a flashback. It's fascinating. And of course, kind of the chapter ends with apparently Tsubasa going, "You know what? We should be using discretion." Goes immediately to the final boss and asks him what's going on. So next chapter, Sota might give him an explanation. We might see another cancellation. Oh god, I'm working up to the next chapter, aren't I? And onward we march to Ginka and Luna, chapter 29. Hey look, a year has passed. Oh dear. So, this is the final chapter. Kind of figured that out immediately as soon as I saw that time skip. But yes, apparently in the course of a year, Ginka and team have been trying to get Luna's memories back to no avail. Apparently, there are rules to magic that aren't properly explained. You can't bring people back from the dead. You can't go in the past. It sucks, but apparently Luna will never remember her past, or at least will never remember Ginka being in her past and developing her as a magician. And it sort of ends on a solitary note of, we're going to go. We're going to go on a new journey. Ginka and Luna are going to go to the sea, and we're not going to see it, or at least not under the title of Ginka and Luna, as the series ends on a sort of bittersweet note of, hey, we lost our memories, but we can just make new ones. It's sad to see a series like this go. It was good, but unfortunately it did not seem to grab the audience it needed. I'll get into this on a different rant, but again, it's nice to see it at least showed up for half a year. Hey look, it's Kanabanashi, chapter 57. We've gotten to the end of this little tournament with Hikaru showing up as the secret apprentice of Econ? Apparently she's given up her entire acting career to become a Rakugo. She's gotten into the swamp. I've noted down Akane's swamp thing. So the story we get from her is apparently the Miller's Torment, a little Oiron story, and I was immediately noting that down. I'm like, wait a minute, who could have taught her? It was Urara. It had to be Urara, who apparently is just working both sides because, she is a shit taker. This is a little telling to Kane, who couldn't do Urara justice, or at least not do it the way Urara could. So now we kind of get a competing fight within the Arakawa school, with Hikaru being more of the performer professionally versus Akane, who's sort of starting from zero and moving upwards through just Rakugo. So we're in it. We're going to be having a fun time here with getting into the big final three of this. So, Blue Box, chapter 96. This was sort of a feels chapter. There's not really a lot to cover. Essentially, we have the entire chapter of Chinatsu looking for Taiki in the school after learning what he did, and we get more of like she gets more information about why he did it and how he did it, and we just get that final like 4 or 5 pages or 6 pages really of just them looking at each other and then holding each other next to the Christmas tree as Christmas singing's happening in the background. So it's a very feelsy chapter. You can really feel like there was either going to be a confession or at least a huge moment building up, or this might be the big moment, to be honest. It is Christmas. It is the time for a big romantic, celebration or a big romantic moment. So this is sort of it. I also find it hilarious. Today is Easter, by the way. Dating this a bit, but it is Easter today, and we are having a Christmas celebration where we're seeing, Christ is born on the day Christ actually came back again, or at least that the story goes. It's really Spring's Day, but whatever. Either way, Jesus came back as a chocolate bunny. That's all. That's all that matters, and we get a glorious comic out of it. Continuing the theme of romance with Witch Watch, chapter 104, and Nico apparently is really bored. She's like, it's getting kind of tiring just seeing a bunch of guys naked around me and they don't really care. I want romance. And of course, we deliver with a girl looking for help because she's in love with her old childhood friend who is a stubborn mule, as is she. Two tsunderes. Oh, good God, two tsunderes are in love with each other. This feels familiar. Anyway, of course, we see that the confession between the two of them. They accept it, and they move on. Well, at the end, Nico kind of goes, "It really wasn't the magic that did it, but rather just the confidence of biting the bullet and taking the plunge of changing their relationship." So we might be seeing something soon with Nico, or at least getting her to come out of her shell a little bit with Moi, but the tides might soon change as October rolls on. Don't look now, boys. It's Sakamoto Days, chapter 114, and it's actually a pretty quiet chapter. Sakamoto Days is usually a bombastic, crazy affair, but this one is slowing down a bit. We're dealing with strategy, how to get the VIP to the airport as best as possible without getting into any more big trouble. And of course, we gotta get a bit of a heart-to-heart between Kei and Akao. Akao apologizing for being kind of a jerk. Well, it seems Kei is kind of okay with being called an ordinary person, because apparently Kei is a spy, a dirty, dirty, dirty spy. He does become slur later, so clearly he does something terrible. And apparently he was not okay with the idea of killing a small child and lady, or at least civilians in this case. So we're going to be getting either a big action set piece with Sakamoto seeing Kei for what he truly is, or we're going to get Kei doing the true villain dive and doing something awful for himself. So we'll be moving on. Hopefully that motorcycle gets used as an improvised weapon. Okay, look, we're going to be talking about Ayakashi Triangle 126. This is fan service? Okay, it's not really fan service. It's just TNA, but for straight women and possibly gay men. He is a 16-year-old boy, or technically he's actually less than a year old, considering he's actually a weird curse trap that just looks like a male Matsuri. Apparently, Shadow May has figured it out, and decides not to tell anyone, because they're all her enemies. So why should she ally with anyone? And of course, this leads to a moment of Suzu being alone with evil Matsuri, or male Matsuri, and male Matsuri just clicks and decides, oh, I gotta strip my clothes off and be naked, and we get male nipple, on screen. This is dirty. He is underage, I do not approve. I don't approve of anything in this series, honestly. These are dirty, dirty children. Where's that cat? Oh, he's being chased. So at least we know where he is. So how will Suzu get out of this one? Will girl Matsuri come out of the bathroom in time? That sentence is weird. This series is weird. And so we have come to Undead Unlock 154. And we're now on the space quest to save Unfeel. Remember Phil? Do you remember Phil? I don't remember Phil. He was just one of the kids who was a part of the Union, but I do not remember him doing anything. Maybe my memory's running me ragged, I don't know. Either way, we're off to save Phil from apparently being attacked by an alien in space. This chapter is also similar to other chapters this week, which was mostly build up to something bigger. And this time it was mostly a team building exercise to figure out what would be the best team to go up into space. And of course, it's the obvious team of Fuko, Nico, and Creed. Creed, the guy who just came in. But what? We're getting more of an explanation of what Nico's real job is here: saving children. How dare they use children for science? Evil, evil science, says the scientist. So, of course, they all have arguments about where they are in the totem pole. Billy isn't even in the roster, but he has at least a say in the team dynamic, and they all want Nico because Nico really needs to be there, especially after his impassioned speech there. And we've gotten our team. We're going up to space to save Phil. Hooray! And that will do it for this week. Though I want to talk about something real quick, just to end this off on. Now, I read only a selection of the comics. I don't read all of Shonen Jump every week. Mostly because I haven't really touched all the series. I haven't even started Jujutsu Kaisen. I've barely ever touched Elusive Samurai or Martial. And don't even get me started on Mission Yuzakura Family? I don't know, I'm not going to pronounce that right. Either way, I don't read all of these, but I at least acknowledge that a lot of them have been going on for a while. Again, some of them are getting animes now. Martial just got announced for an anime recently. Again, dating this video. Hey, like I didn't at the start. But at the same time, I look at the fact that Akane Banashi is the youngest of the oldest series, while the oldest of the new series is now Ichinose Family, which only has 20 chapters on its belt. I mean, if you haven't noticed, we also didn't do Jiangshi X this week. The technically oldest, youngest until today, which is at 11 chapters, and it's going to be at 12 chapters 2 weeks from now. So it's just fascinating to me that there's such a big gap between like what was the Akane Banashi time to now, which is the at this point Tenmaku cinema time. And it's a little surprising because a lot of them don't seem like they're going to survive very much. Like I have some love for things like Fabricant 100 and Ichigoki's Under Control. I mean, Cypher Academy I hate read, but it's so much like none of them feel like they're going to survive very much. So really the baseline is it feels like you have to survive the 20th chapter mark. Because after, right before chapter 30, between chapter 20 and chapter 30 is the dead zone, where they are just out for blood, and they are going to just kill series. So we get Ginken Luna dying, and it was a good series. It did extremely well for itself in my book, but it clearly didn't click with the audience. Like, the art was good, it was consistent. The last chapter had some amazing drawings in it. There weren't any bad drawings, so it wasn't the artist burnout or anything like that. It just couldn't click with the audience, which just surprises me. It was fast, it was detailed, it was incredibly fun to see them, punch around and do adventures, and again, have arcs that were about a couple of chapters long, not really huge arcs, getting to the point really quickly, but apparently it didn't resonate with audiences. So it does make me wonder, what does a Shonen Jump series have to do today to succeed like Shonen Jump series of the past? As I mean, at this point, things like Marshall are 3 years old. They're getting up there in years. These aren't the series that came up and then continued on. Oh, these series have lasted a while, and the things they're doing aren't necessarily the things that work to keep things alive. Because Blue Box, for instance, is getting to 100 chapters in like 4 weeks, or closer to be like 5 weeks at this point. It is going to be the Golden Week soon, but we're getting that's surviving up to 2 years, almost 2 years at this point, and it's it's a romance series, but like multiple of these series are action series, adventure series, things that get you pumped. But they died. They all died. And we have such a big gap between the newest series and the oldest. Like literally, the amount of series sort of pales in comparison to the youngest of the oldest series. So I'm hesitant to say that. Hopefully, the next series, maybe the one that comes after Tenmaku Cinema next week, or possibly next week, will become the next big Shonen Jump story. I sort of look for it because I found a couple golden ones here. Like I loved the High School Family that went on for almost 3 years. I love Undead Unluck, and that survived like 3 years as well. And there's Sakamoto Days, which again is looking forward to being one of the biggest series of Shonen Jump. But will they last as long as, say, One Piece, or even Naruto, or even Bleach? So, again, I'm a little worried for this overall function of Jump, especially if they don't really have anything new that's really jumping out at the audience and making a big splash. That's enough of me jibber jabbing about. That'll do it for this week. I'll see you next week. It looks like we're getting another chapter set next week, so Golden Week's probably at the end of the month. But hey, we'll see you there. And I say the YouTube things: like, comment, subscribe, do a little dance, sing a little song, get down tonight. Bye.